If you're raising chickens in your garden, you've probably run into this before. Feed costs keep going up every month. But egg production is inconsistent. The coop needs constant cleaning, while the garden is still full of pests, weeds, and leftover vegetables going to waste. The problem isn't always that you're raising too few chickens. Sometimes the problem is that you haven't chosen the right breed, you haven't selected the right hatching eggs, and you haven't made your flock a true part of your garden system. While learning about self-reliant communities such as the Amish, I realized they have a very practical way of looking at chickens. Chickens are not just animals raised for eggs. A good flock should help reduce feed costs, make use of garden scraps, reduce pest pressure, produce fertilizer, and still maintain steady productivity, season after season. So in this video, we're going to go through 7 Amish chicken raising principles, from choosing the right breeds, selecting the right birds, and choosing the right hatching eggs, to caring for your flock and integrating chickens into your garden system so your garden can spend less, produce more, and achieve its highest productivity year after year. The first principle is this: choosing the right breed is more important than choosing the right number of chickens. Many new chicken keepers make a very common mistake. They see a breed that is popular, looks attractive, or is advertised as a high egg producer, and they buy it right away. But when it comes to practical backyard chicken keeping, what matters is not how beautiful the bird looks. What matters is whether it is well suited to your environment. A good backyard chicken should have 4 qualities. It should be healthy, able to handle your local weather, good at foraging for its own food, and capable of laying consistently for many years. For example, for a small family or a backyard garden, just 6 healthy laying hens can provide a steady supply of eggs while remaining easy to manage, requiring less feed, and putting less pressure on the land. On the other hand, if you keep 12 chickens that are weak, poor foragers, or poorly adapted to your climate, you may end up buying more feed, cleaning the coop more often, and still not getting more eggs. For a backyard garden, you may want to consider dual-purpose breeds such as Rhode Island Red, Plymouth Rock, Australorp, or Sussex. These breeds not only produce a respectable number of eggs, typically around 200 to 300 eggs per year, but are also hardy, easy to raise, and better at finding some of their own food when allowed to forage in the garden. The second principle is this: don't choose chickens based only on egg numbers. Choose breeds with strong foraging instincts. In a backyard garden, this is one factor that can save you a lot on feed costs. A chicken that only stands around waiting for feed will cost you money every day. But a chicken that enjoys scratching through leaf litter, searching for insects, eating weed seeds, and picking up garden pests can supplement part of its diet directly from your garden. For a backyard garden setup, you should not let chickens roam freely all day in young vegetable beds, because they can scratch up and damage the plants. A more practical approach is to let chickens into harvested garden areas, leaf-covered pathways, old compost zones, or use a chicken tractor that can be moved daily. An adult chicken typically needs about 4 ounces of feed per day, or nearly 1/4 pound. If the flock can find additional insects, weed seeds, and leftover vegetables on its own, the amount of purchased feed can be reduced significantly. That is why breeds such as Rhode Island Red, Plymouth Rock, Sussex, and Australorp are often well suited for a backyard garden. They are reasonably good layers, hardy birds, and tend to be more active and better foragers. For a practical homesteader, a chicken that knows how to work in the garden is sometimes worth more than a chicken that only has impressive egg production numbers on paper. If you find yourself buying new chicks every year to replace or expand your flock, then this section is very important. One way to reduce costs is to hatch chicks from your own flock. And to do that successfully, you need to start by selecting the right hatching eggs. Many people think that the bigger the egg, the better. But after observing the practical chicken keeping methods used in self-reliant communities such as the Amish, I notice that they tend to look at the bigger picture. They do not focus only on the egg itself. They also look at the hen that produced it. The hen should be healthy, show no signs of disease, move actively, eat well, have smooth feathers, and lay consistently. A medium-sized egg from a healthy hen is often more valuable than a very large egg from a weak hen or one that lays inconsistently. When selecting eggs for hatching, prioritize eggs that are clean, have smooth shells, are free of cracks, are not misshapen, and are neither too small nor too large. The ideal weight is usually about 1.8 to 2.2 ounces, or approximately 50 to 62 grams, depending on the breed. Eggs should be collected within 7 days, stored in a cool place at about 55 to 65 degrees Fahrenheit, with the pointed end facing downward, and should not be washed aggressively with water, because doing so can remove the egg's natural protective coating. Once you have selected good eggs, the next step is proper incubation. If you are using an incubator, the temperature is typically maintained at around 99.5 degrees Fahrenheit, with humidity at about 45 to 55% during the first 18 days. The eggs should be turned regularly, usually 3 to 5 times per day, to prevent the embryo from sticking to the shell. From day 18 to day 21, stop turning the eggs and increase the humidity to about 65 to 70% to help the chicks hatch more easily. Chicken eggs typically require about 21 days of incubation. During that period, you can candle the eggs around day 7 to day 10 to identify and remove eggs that are not developing properly. This helps keep the incubator cleaner and improves the chances of success for the remaining healthy eggs. Many people think that the more chickens they raise, the more eggs they will get. But in a backyard garden, too many chickens can cause costs to increase faster than productivity. When the flock becomes overcrowded, they will eat more feed, scratch the soil bare, damage young plants, increase coop odor, become more prone to disease, and compete with each other for nesting boxes. To make it easier to visualize, if you only have a small run of about 100 square feet, or roughly 10 by 10 feet, you should start with only about 4 to 6 laying hens. With a rotational grazing system or a larger chicken run, you can allow at least 10 to 15 square feet of outdoor space per bird. And if you want your chickens to truly have the opportunity to forage naturally in the garden, the more space they have, and the more leaf litter, grass, and insects available, the better. The important thing is not to let the flock damage the garden faster than the garden can recover. A small but healthy flock, with enough room to move, enough nesting boxes, and rotated through different areas, is usually far more economical than a large flock that requires constant feed purchases, constant co-op cleaning, and dealing with damaged soil every week. We often think that we need to build a chicken coop that is very large or very expensive. But for the Amish, a good chicken coop does not need to be fancy. It simply needs to meet the basic needs of the flock. The most important thing is that the coop should be dry, well ventilated, and easy to clean. Moisture buildup inside the coop often causes more problems than cold weather. That is why the coop should have upper ventilation openings to allow air to circulate while still preventing direct drafts from blowing onto the chickens while they sleep. As for space, many backyard chicken keepers in the United States typically provide about 3 to 4 square feet of coop space per chicken, along with at least 10 square feet of outdoor run space per chicken. If you keep 6 hens, a coop measuring about 4 by 6 feet, combined with an outdoor run of about 60 square feet, is usually enough to get started. Inside the coop, plan for about 1 nesting box for every 4 to 5 hens and about 8 to 10 inches of roosting space per bird, so they can sleep comfortably at night. A well-designed coop not only helps keep chickens healthier, but also saves you time on cleaning, reduces disease problems, and helps maintain consistent productivity for many years. After choosing the right breed and raising the correct flock size, the next step is to take advantage of the chicken's natural instincts. In a backyard garden, chickens are not only an egg source. If managed properly, they can become a small cleanup crew that helps you handle many daily tasks. But this is where many people make a mistake. They let chickens roam freely across the entire garden, and a few days later, they find young vegetable beds torn up, seedlings uprooted, mulch scratched out, and ripe fruits pecked and damaged. So the rule is not to let chickens go wherever they want. The correct principle is to place chickens in the right area at the right time and for a limited duration. The best areas are harvested beds, leaf-covered pathways, weedy sections that need clearing, old compost piles, or garden edges without young plants. There, chickens scratch through leaf litter, search for insects, eat weed seeds, consume food scraps, and mix their manure into organic material. These are tasks you would normally have to do by hand or pay for in materials and labor. To prevent damage, you can use fencing, movable gates, or a chicken tractor to control their range. For actively growing vegetable beds, especially seedlings under 6 to 8 inches, it is best not to allow chickens inside. If you want chickens to clean up a harvested bed, let them work for a short period, such as a few hours a day. Then move them before the soil becomes too disturbed. A very effective system is rotation. Today, chickens work a harvested bed, tomorrow they move to leaf-covered paths, and a few days later, they go to an old compost area. This way, the flock still has work to do and can forage naturally, but the garden is not overloaded. Chickens are an excellent tool for the garden, but only when used with control. When placed in the right spot at the right time, they can help clean pests, process organic waste, turn leaf litter, produce fertilizer, and save you a significant amount of time throughout the seasons. One of the reasons chickens fit so well into a self-sufficient garden is that they help reduce waste. Instead of throwing away old vegetables, insect-damaged leaves, slightly bruised fruit, young grass after mowing, or vegetables that are not used in the kitchen, you can use some of them as supplemental feed for your chickens. But it is important to understand this correctly. This is not a complete replacement for their main feed. An adult laying hen still needs about 4 ounces of feed per day to maintain good health and lay eggs consistently. Leftover vegetables, tender grass, and bruised fruit should only be viewed as supplemental sources that help reduce costs, increase dietary variety, and make use of what the garden has already produced. The safe approach is to feed only material that is still fresh, not moldy, not rotten, and not contaminated with pesticides. Cut up hard pieces, Provide only as much as the chickens can eat during the day, and remove leftovers to prevent flies, rodents, and bad odors. When done correctly, the garden provides part of the chicken's food, and the chickens give back eggs, fertilizer, and a less wasteful system. Many people focus only on the number of eggs collected each week, but for experienced chicken keepers, a healthy flock is often the biggest money-saving investment of all. When chickens become stressed because of heat, humidity, dirty housing, lack of water, or overcrowding, they usually eat more, lay fewer eggs, and become more susceptible to disease. Just a few weeks of reduced productivity can cost you more than many of the savings you were trying to achieve elsewhere. So before thinking about increasing egg production, make sure the basics are covered. The coop should be dry, well ventilated, provide shade during the summer, and always have access to clean water. Many experts recommend providing at least 3 to 4 square feet of coop space per chicken and about 10 square feet of outdoor run space per bird. For nesting boxes, about 1 nesting box for every 4 to 5 hens is usually sufficient. Another important factor is disease prevention. Experienced keepers usually focus on preventing problems before they start, rather than waiting until the flock gets sick. They regularly replace wet bedding, clean feeders, and waterers. Avoid leaving excess feed sitting out for days, and limit contact between their chickens and wild birds. If you bring in new chickens, it is a good idea to keep them separated for about 2 to 4 weeks before introducing them to the flock. This helps reduce the risk of bringing disease into the entire group. In addition, observe your flock every day. A healthy chicken is usually active, alert, bright-eyed, well-feathered, and eating normally. If a bird suddenly isolates itself from the flock, eats less, or remains puffed up for an extended period, it may be an early sign of a health problem. What is most worth learning from the practical approach used by self-reliant communities, such as the Amish, is not some secret trick. It is the way they view chickens as part of the entire garden system. A good chicken does more than produce eggs. It can help process food scraps, control insects, create fertilizer, and reduce many everyday chores. When you choose the right breed, keep the right number of birds, build a practical coop, and focus on flock health from the beginning, your chickens can become one of the most valuable long-term investments in your garden for years to come.